from Lausanne, Switzerland, where the federal government just announced a second referendum for next month about the COVID laws, and in particular, the requirement for COVID certificates to attend large events and indoor spaces. I am Professor Demian Hodari of EHL Lausanne.
And a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us around the world. And welcome to Rise, and back in my lovely little London flat and little shop of horrors, as you can see from my plant that has COVID grown probably about 1 kilometer in this last year and a half. Thank you for joining us for season 4. We are delighted you are back in that place that travel, tourism, and hospitality has to keep everyone informed and inspired about what's ahead in our travel and tourism sector. We're thrilled to have everyone with us on our registered Zoom platform, as well as on Facebook and YouTube Live. Please remember to join us on Zoom so you can take part in the conversation and the polls, as well as send in questions directly. We want you as part of the conversation. Now, importantly, today is admittedly a real heart glow of an episode. We have with us 2 exceptional leaders joining us from 2 very special kingdoms in the Middle East. And we're talking about a subject matter that has become increasingly important for travelers, especially as travel lockdowns and groundings demonstrated the impact that our travelers have, good and sometimes bad, on communities and culture. Professor Hodari, why don't you share a little more about today's episode, please?
Well, I don't know if I have much more to say about that, but I do think it's a fascinating topic and one that admittedly, I don't know that much about. So I'm looking forward to learning along with our audience a bit more about cultural heritage and preservation of important sites. So I think that's going to be fascinating. We've also got 2 pieces of information, data from our intelligence partners, from CoStar's STR group and from PwC, and we're going to get to those in a little while. But as always, we like to start our show as much as possible by hearing from our audience. And so today we've got our first poll, which will magically appear now. Which of the following 2 terms of employment are the most important to you now when looking for a new job, or if you were looking for a new job? And as always, thanks everybody for participating. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can jot your answers down in the comments or email them to us. And we'll share those results a little bit later with you. Anita?
Stunning. Thank you very much. As always, we try to make sure that we select information that we feel you need to know about what's going on in the world of travel, tourism, and hospitality right now. It's about separating the news from the noise. So my first share, I thought this was really important, as exactly as I said to you a few weeks ago when I was actually coming in on Rise from Dubai, if you really want to see where international recovery is going, follow the money, and which is why I was at the Arabian and African Hospitality Investment Conference that was held in Dubai, the first major event in the industry in the last almost 2 years. I'm sharing with you now an important one, because this came out in terms of FDI, foreign direct investment projects that are taking place in the last few years up to 2020. Why is this important? Firstly, it's focusing on the Middle East. Where can you follow the money? What destinations are actually being invested in? And please take a note of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Also, critically, as we've been talking about on Rise, when you follow the money about FDI and projects, you also follow the jobs. So when we look at the Middle East, the projects that are underway, 263 across the region and in Africa, 40,000 new jobs are expected to come out of that. The ROI is not just about the revenues generated, it's also about job recovery. So this is really important as an indicator. If you want to know where the recovery is coming from the industry, follow the money and you follow the jobs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So I've got something a little bit less optimistic, as is my want. Half of companies are optimizing their business travel policy to decrease their environmental impact. I just want to look at a couple of these numbers with you. This is from a study from Deloitte. Transition to more internal meetings online, 76% of companies surveyed. 67% are going to optimize meeting agendas to reduce the need to fly. 58% restrict frequency of business travel. 55% reduce international or long distance travel. As we'll talk a little bit about this in more detail later, the impacts of business travel and reduced business travel, which most of us agree are here to stay to certain degrees, are going to have repercussions everywhere, including not just on hotels, but on jobs. And so we're going to have to transition in this economy and these industries to find ways around this. And this is just, not trying to highlight negative news, but highlight, change is happening, and we can't have our heads buried in the sand and just pretend everything's going to come back to normal. So I just want people to be aware that it's not just you or I who think this. It's everybody in the industry, everybody who's responsible for business travel is rethinking the future of that. So on a different note, we've got now CoStar's Jan Freitag, who's got some STR hotel data to share with us, bespoke for the RISE audience. Over to Jan.
Hello, RISE. Thank you so much for having me back. I am coming to you today from my hotel room at the Chicago Athletic Club in beautiful Chicago, Illinois, where I'm attending the conference. Professor Hodari asked me to add a little bit of Middle Eastern color, so what I'm going to show you here are two slides. Number one, we're looking at a variety of markets, and we're indexing their RevPAR performance to 2019, the first 8 months of 2019. So if the bar is above 100, that means that, the performance is better than it was 2 years ago. But you see, for the majority of markets that we're tracking, unfortunately, that is not the case. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how regional travel is going to lift those numbers, and also how international travel in 2022 will hopefully make those numbers a lot more positive. The second slide is what we call the eyeball chart. And what we're looking at here is, for the last week in August, the occupancy by market. We group all the markets together, and you see that, of course, in the last week in August for 2020, that a lot of markets, almost half the markets, had an occupancy of sub 25%. That has changed now quite dramatically, and a lot of markets, over half, are showing performance of better than 50%, between 50 and 100% occupancy. That's good. But I think the takeaway from those two charts is that it's really mixed performance. And we're really curious to see how the fourth quarter, and then specifically the first quarter of next year, will shape up for these markets. Thanks so much for having me. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
It's always so great how not only does it share some interesting data with us, but really makes sense of it and clarify some things. And I appreciate him going with the theme of today's episode and focusing on the Middle East.
He's a sweetie, Demian, and I must say, to your point, it's lovely that he responded directly to a request for information relevant to today's RISE and fresh for today's RISE. And clearly you can see that he's demonstrating getting back out on the road again is exhausting. Our social muscles have softened. So thank you, Jan, for coming to the stage in a slightly ruffled getting back to business way, but we're ever grateful for your participation and your partnership.
I do appreciate the participation of our intelligence partners. All right, as always, some headlines for you. There's lots of things in the news. Anita and I get to pick one thing each, which we think was particularly interesting. Mine has nothing to do with COVID, but Standard Hotel's parent elevates President Amber Asher to the CEO. And as you can see from the title of my slide, it's about time. This is the first major hotel company to have a female CEO. And as a father of two girls and teaching at a school where roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of our students are all female, it's nice to see this. There's a lot of extremely qualified people out in the industry, including very successful women, and it's nice to be able to share this news and to see this happening. I know that some of the other hotel companies that recently announced CEOs, they had women in their finalists, but none of them took the step and made that decision. So it's great to see Standard doing it. I know they have great ambitious growth plans, and it's going to be exciting to see how this goes forward. Anita?
Nice choice. Brilliant. And my choice, surprise, surprise, is about aviation. But I chose, just for you, Demian, but I chose this for a reason. Firstly, this is an interesting one. If you think about it, as I've indicated, by 2024, India is going to be the third largest aviation in the industry in the world. The national carrier, a source of great pride, Air India, was a source of great challenge and concern, especially for the thousands of people that work for it. And then Tata recently stepped in and spent over $2 billion in actually purchasing back Air India, because they launched it technically in 1932. Why is this important? Because it demonstrates importantly that, as we've always said, unless the skies reopen and airlines take back to the airs, we don't have destination development, either domestically, regionally, or internationally. Tata, again, the owners of IHCL, which includes the Taj Hotel groups, they bought back the national carrier. Now, just to put this in perspective, it's 100 in-service aircraft, 24 Air India Express, 24,000 employees who no longer have to fear for their livelihoods and know that their airline that they've worked for with the national flag is going to be protected. 2,738 international airport slots at airports around the world. That is the currency to getting people in and out of destinations. 1,838 international slots in India itself, over almost 5,000 domestic slots. Why is this important? Again, as we say, number 3 biggest airline in the world, they recorded over 319 million passengers in 2019. So this recovery, this saving the national carrier and the pride of the flag on the legacy carrier and Tata stepping in is brilliant. It's stepping up the competition and it's stepping up the opportunity for one of the strongest international outbound markets and inbound destinations to get back on its feet by getting back in the skies.
If I owned shares in Tata, I'd personally be selling right now, but that's just.
You're rude, shame. So in terms of my video choice, now it actually links very much what you actually spoke about in your introduction, Demian. This came out on October 11th. This was last week. This technically was Freedom Day in Australia, because for the first time since March of 2020, international borders reopened and a lot of the lockdowns were closed or were unlocked. Why is this important? Because it is so critical we remain sensitive. Parts of the world are feeling very comfortable, feeling that they're going into the next normal, and there is caution yet confidence around getting through the pandemic. Other parts of the world are still suffering. Whether it's Australia finally opening up again, and to think of the number of people who've been grounded and locked away from family and friends. New Zealand just announced today extended lockdowns, and parts of Asia are in situations where they're only opening up borders to corridors, so bilateral agreements between 2 countries to have aviation and travel. We must please, all of us around the RISE world, all of us in the global community, be sensitive to the fact that our progress is not all the same. And until we all get through the pandemic, none of us get through the pandemic. But I thought this video beautifully captured the euphoria of finally being set free. Please.
Good evening. The doors to freedom were flung open and Sydney wasted no time racing in, splurging more than $130 million as our economy roars back to life. But tonight, as we close in on our next vaccination milestone, a warning that we may have to wait a little longer before we hit the road.
The hangover from Freedom Day has been well worth it. Hitting the town after more than 100 days locked up, pubs, cafes and gyms, the credit card got to work out as well.
It looks like New South Wales had a ripper of a day yesterday.
The National Australia Bank has done its sums, $5 million spent on haircuts, $10 million on clothing, nearly $13 million on restaurants and pubs, up from $1 million last Monday.
We anticipated to be really busy, but yesterday exceeded our expectations. We were busy from the hour that we opened.
Then there was retail, $100 million splurged in 24 hours compared to $35 million a week ago.
I thought that was amazing. And just the, oh my goodness, relief and exhale. We cannot forget that we are not all going through this at the same time in the same way. So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, I think it's a good point. I think it's something we talk about backstage sometimes is our audience comes from all over the world. So we may be asking, how does it feel to be out of lockdown? But half our audience might still be in lockdown. And I think it's a really good point to remember that, you know, if not every country, every region is really going through this in different ways and at different stages. And it'll be interesting to see now when winter comes to the north and summer to the south, how things change. So good point. I've got a little something special today. I got a little shout out to my former student, Michelle Walder, who's very successful in her own right, but has been battling cancer over the years, and she started something now called the C Card, and that's a way for boutique hotels, I think primarily still in New York City, but looking to expand, for them to offer rooms at preferred rates to family members that are accompanying their loved ones through treatment in different hospitals or facilities. It can get quite expensive, and as you know, treatment can take a long time, so that's a lot of nights. So she's finding a way, generate some business for hotels, for the rooms that they can't sell, and do something good for people who need a little extra help. So well done, Michelle, and good luck with this going forward.
You're a softie, Professor Hodari. You hide it well, but you are a softie.
It's nice when you see former students doing not just well for themselves, but good things for the world. So I just wanted to point that out.
Brilliant. Excellent. And now we move on. Want to do the intro or shall I do the intro? Your choice.
Go ahead.
Excellent. We are very excited to welcome to the RISE stage another one of our new intelligence partners, PwC, and a very friendly face to RISE as he was one of our executives in residence. It's Nicolas Mayer, who is an expert when it comes to the Middle East, and he shared some really good perspective again to drill into today's conversation about what is happening in the travel, tourism, and hospitality world. Nicolas, over to you.
Good afternoon, dear RISE community. My name is Nicolas Mayer. I'm PwC's Global Industry Lead for the hospitality and tourism industry. Today, I would like to shine a spotlight on Saudi Arabia's tourism transformation. In a bid to move away from the petrochemical industry into a more diversified economy, the kingdom is strongly and strategically developing its tourism industry. By 2030, and led under the Vision 2030, tourism will contribute over 15% to the kingdom's GDP. It will create over 2 million jobs, many for the younger generation. It will strengthen the local private sector and be a source of foreign direct investment into the kingdom. Over 100 million visitors will visit the kingdom by 2030 for leisure, for business, for religious and pilgrimage reasons, as well as for the cultural assets of the kingdom. I would like to shine a spotlight on the many developments that are currently happening in the kingdom, and I would like you to take a closer look and to perhaps research it a little bit after this call, because what is happening is both exciting, it is impressive in scale, it is impressive in strategic focus and discipline, and it really shines the spotlight on a country that has perhaps historically not been known for leisure tourism, but has exceptionally many assets to show. Enjoy and have a good RISE. Bye-bye.
Every time I talk with Nicolas or we do some work together and he shares some of the numbers and this massive size of the investment and transformation that's going on, I still can't wrap my head around it. It's still numbers that just, even when I used to think about the numbers of Dubai 20 years ago, this still, is massive in comparison. And so it's tremendous.
Massive and impressive, as he says. That's really important.
So back to our audience. Let's see what you answered for our first poll today. All right, Anita, it's interesting. We look like continued professional development and salary and benefits still number one. And I find that interesting because it's not about working from home or flexible hours or even, working from the office, things that I would have thought would have been more important given the experience people have had during the lockdown and during the pandemic, but it seems to be probably pretty much the same things as always, right? Benefits and salary and chance to improve oneself at work.
It's interesting because flexible hours, I'm intrigued by, again, that is quite solid as a number. And I really believe so much of that is linked to the fact that people are recognizing by having worked from home, how much time they've wasted in a commute. So that flexibility at least allows people to choose when they go in to be most productive and not spend your time cramped up, socially undistanced from others. So as always, thank you for everyone who's contributed to the polls. Please do go to rise-weekly.com to register for RISE so you can actively participate and we can hear your voice. Stunning. And now we move on to today's executives in residence. Very, very excited about this session. And we have with us today two, as I said, very dearly loved leaders. Both are absolute visionaries when it comes to making sure that destination development is for the long run. It's done carefully and thoughtfully, and it keeps culture and community at its heart. We have joining us from Jordan, the beautiful, Her Royal Highness Princess and also Dr. Dana Firas. Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. She's the president of Petra National Trust. She's UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador, a culture and heritage advocate. And as much as she is truly a princess, not just by cosmetic title, she is a princess. For me and my gorgeous girls at AMNA, she's the queen of our hearts. So I've just given you a promotion, madam, and we are thrilled that you are with us. Another one of the advocates that we have in cultural heritage is joining us from Riyadh. Are you actually in Riyadh or are you in Alula, Amr?
I made it to the other Nabatean capital, Al-Ula, so I'm here in Al-Ula.
Brilliant. Amr Al-Madani, he is the CEO of the Royal Commission for Alula, joining us from, again, as I said, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the exquisite Alula, one of the giga projects at the heart of Vision 2030, as Nicolas spoke about. Now, I must admit, full disclosure, I'm very blessed to have worked with Amr for almost 2 years as one of his RCU advisory board members. He is one of the bravest, strongest, boldest, and fastest entrepreneurial spirits I have ever met in my entire life. So thrilled to have you both here. Marhaba and shukran for being with us. We are thrilled that you're joining us on Rise.
Thank you very much. I mean, what a great session. By the way, I just enjoyed the past sessions as well. Amazing interactivity and media utilization. So things are on the rise again. It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for being here. I'm going to start with maybe a challenge for you both. 30 seconds. Explain to us what Alula is, why it's important, and the same for the Petra Heritage Site. Maybe Her Royal Highness could start.
It is one of the most magnificent sites in the whole world, as recognized by UNESCO. It's not just me giving you a subjective analysis. It is a brilliant representation of the Nabatean Kingdom, probably one of the few sites that is majestic and carved into sandstone in beautiful rose red cities. And it is a cradle of civilization and a place that has seen human habitation and evidence of the development of the entire gamut of human history and the human story for 200,000 years.
Tremendous. Mr. Madani, maybe you could explain a little bit about Alula.
Thank you. Without much to add to what Her Royal Highness said, this is a place of multiple civilizations, interactions, where stories haven't yet left the place. They're all carved everywhere in the mountains. And I think it has so much mystery to be understood, studied, preserved, and communicated to the world that makes it just for that an interesting place for people to come and spend some time. Yes, it does have a combination of amazing nature around it, proximity to the Red Sea, etc. But I think the mystery of the authentic stories that are hidden here to be unlocked makes it a nice place to discover for the next 20 to 30 years.
Thank you. Anita?
Demian, if I can add, just from the point of view of scale, because I think people are used to seeing Petra, but not necessarily Alula. 22,000 square kilometers, Amr, and almost 70,000 Bedouin already call it home. So it really is bringing to life and lives the opportunity of genuine sustainability development. Now, Your Royal Highness, as much you know how much I love and respect you, and I must say you have the most stylish. As much, Amr, as I love your traditional clothing, and I'm so grateful you showed up in your traditional pride, I love Her Royal Highness's stylish background and shirt combination. I think you win from the point of view of globally with Rise's backstage. So thank you.
Yeah, this was not intentional. Can I just put that out there for your audience? The psychedelic look was completely because I was completely thoughtless about what it was that I was going to wear. So apologies for your audience who needs sunglasses today.
Yeah, it's beautiful, amazing.
And Madonna would be very impressed. So, Your Royal Highness, you and I met 5 years ago in the UNWTO context. And again, I say with great love and respect, you were not necessarily a fan of the context of tourism, because at the time, rightly, there was a lot of risk to protected sites around the world because of tourists basically disrespecting them. You've now become quite the convert and one of the most credible champions of making sure that culture and heritage, UNWTO and UNESCO, work together to develop tourism to actually protect culture. Can you please explain a little bit about your journey?
So in the beginning, Petra is sandstone, and I'm just going to focus on the impact on Petra. And so it's a combination of the site itself that is vulnerable and fragile, but it is also policies. And for many, many years, there was a disconnect between tourism policies and then any policies that were focused on preservation. And tourism was constantly a source to promote larger and larger and larger numbers coming into a site, regardless of whether or not the site has the ability to withstand those numbers. So that combination was very difficult to wrap my head around as somebody who comes from the preservation side of the argument. And I think it was over these 5 years and through my conversations with the UNWTO and others who are working in this field, who have opened my eyes in many ways to the idea that the tourism industry can very much be an ally in what we are trying to do. And exactly how is one, it's not a numbers game. And so meaningful tourism has become much more important now for the industry, for the tourism industry, as well as for the visitors themselves. So they look for meaningful experiences. And I think for me, that has been an incredible opportunity to provide much more meaningful product for visitors. Number two, environmental issues have become a priority for most people. So as visitors look to come to sites, they don't want to leave an impact. They don't want to have a footprint. They want to be as light as they can in the impact that they leave. And that, for me, is at the core of preservation and protecting these sites. So from the side of the tourism industry and people, I think there has been a shift. On the other hand, I think I've constantly looked at preservation as the antithesis of tourism. So protect the site, close it off, don't let anybody in, and realize that, as a matter of fact, without people coming in, without people investing in these sites, I don't have the resources to protect these sites. Without the interest in these sites, who am I protecting the sites from, for, and how? And so in many ways, I've come to my own sort of evolution in thought, in that quite frequently, as I make my arguments for protecting sites, preserving sites, conserving sites, having a good conservation plan for a site, that is really to meet the needs of the people visiting the site at the core, really, of the argument. And so on both sides, I think it has come together, and I have evolved and have become much more aware of the importance of bringing these two sides together. Not as balance. I used to say it was a balance. It's actually not a balance. Without well-presented, well-preserved sites that are ready to meet, to be offered, to be promoted, to meet the needs of people who seek to visit these sites, there is no tourism. And so it truly is a coming together of the two industries in a very fundamental way.
And which is why you've been so invaluable to our industry, because you've actually come in from the outside and you have the ability to convince those on your side the need to create that harmony, which I know Amr believes in fundamentally as well. But thank you for sharing your personal journey in that regards. Professor Hodari.
I guess my question for both of you really is, so many destinations haven't been able to manage this well, that are over tourism that they're finding, which I know is Anita's favorite word, which they are struggling to find the balance. How do we and with a shift now in travel, still from business to more leisure travel, more leisure destinations, ready to accept more people who want to travel but won't be doing it for business, but will be doing it for leisure. How do we actually manage these crowds and this demand and do the preservation? So maybe you can identify what are the fundamentally the concrete challenges that you're going to face. Mr. Madani, maybe you could answer that.
Thank you. I do think the reputation that tourism had, which Her Royal Highness has taken a stand against it, is a fair bad reputation. If you look at any business model for tourism in the past 20, 30 years, it's about more occupancy, more numbers, it's extractive to a point that maybe works for urban sites, but definitely comes against everything we want to do on heritage and nature inspired sites. The good thing though is human beings, in my opinion, as they continue to travel more and more, are choosing experience more than being there. And I think the rushing of being there in rush numbers is now somehow substantiated by the role of technology. If you really want to see Petra or Al-Ula one time, and you have that rush to not spend money, not have quality time, you can just see it online and digitally. If you're going to make it all the way here, you yourself expect more from the destination than what you expected 30 years ago. You expect stories, transformation. You don't want to be crowded with others. You want to have some bit of distance and intimate relationship with nature and heritage. So that works for us as well. And I think from an advantage point of view in Al-Ula, we're starting late. So we've been building the brand in the minds of people as not your typical backpack trip. So all our activations thoroughly tries to make sure you get here with the intention to learn something new. This is why we use terms like the living museum, museums. We make this more about commitment to discover culture and meet new people. And we've been lucky, honestly. We look at villages around us that are a little bit more urban. They attract exactly the traffic we don't want to attract. And it's been working nice. So we got the brand to that domain. And now we can't ignore the importance of controls, policies. Every operator that works in your domain needs to learn these values, from F&B operators all the way to hotels to drone bashing, etc. You've got to really train the supply chain to ensure that we're all for the long run. We really need to make sure that the assets thrive with visitors by citizens making more prosperous conditions for themselves, therefore become less desperate to extract everything from the side. But that takes patience and takes us to accept that it's a long run. So it's a combination between owning the right brand, utilizing technology to push back the desire for short-term trips that don't add value, but also policies and procedures that you can monitor. And it's not easy. I do appreciate that many heritage sites have suffered globally, but I think closing down your doors won't do any better for the heritage sites as well.
It's interesting you say that, Amar, and both of you are clearly very aligned in that it's not tourism for tourism's sake. And that can actually do more damage. And I've always believed that the fifth element of sustainability beyond economic, social, cultural, and environmental is spiritual and protecting. And I know, Amar, through the blessing of working with you on the RCU, you've been very clear that your team, which is again in turbo speed, is focusing on the fun stuff, the museums, the events, the partnerships, the marketing and promotion. But you've also enforced infrastructure investment. You've created an international airport now in Al-Ula, so you've got direct flights, and in November you're getting them actually from the UK as well, which is brilliant. You've made visas very easy. You've got incredible accommodation partners to bring in the right type of traveler who's going to slow down and respect the opportunity to engage with local culture, conservation, and community. And you've got year-round destination offerings. Now, what I think is important about that is that you're putting the hardware in, even though it's not necessarily the fun, sexy stuff that with tourism, which is often cosmetic. But you've also done something really interesting from a cultural point of view. And I have truth be told, I have a habit that when I travel, I love buying local jewelry. It's small and it packs well. It's a great excuse for a woman to buy jewelry, but it's also a local expression of culture. And you created a brilliant partnership with Piaget, the international luxury jewelry house, and the local designers and students in Alula to be able to showcase local culture through international jewelry brands and lines. Can you share a little bit about, because that was really brilliant for not just the profile, but the pride of the local artisans.
Thank you. The days of people going to a resort, locking themselves out from their community and enjoying most luxurious offers is long gone. People don't want that. So for it to work, authentic tourism demands that people can smell, eat, and feel and touch things from communities that they haven't experienced before. And that's not necessarily something that comes natural to destinations at early stages, because you can just build a good resort. So from day one, we think that tourists will definitely love to see what inspires the locals to create. What's that creative movement? And Saudi Arabia, the PwC lead on tourism, I mean, it's really happening. This is where a lot of things are happening, and young people are coming out, creatives, designers. So we worked with Piaget because Piaget had commitment to actually train and find creators, creative industry all over the world. They came here, they were so inspired. They even had some of their own jewelry, inspired by certain rock formations here. We went to the locals and invited people who are curious enough to join in creating jewelry and learning actual skills of drawings, manufacturing, branding, and selling. And we've got some of their products in the market sold today. Look, tourists who come here don't only want to see the past, they want to engage with the future, they want to engage with today. So it has been brilliant, and it has uplifted the psychology that people see more into themselves than just local villagers. They're now doing work with one of the most interesting brands in the world, and it all works. It's a positive momentum that we need to keep going for tourism to thrive.
And what I love about that, Amr, is very much like with a lot of your hotel brands, it's not just, and quite honestly, international governments working with the kingdom. It's not just our excitement working with them. They're excited to work with us. That's really lovely. So it's a genuine partnership, not a service provider relationship itself. Demian, shall we switch over questions? Because I know the audience seems to be humming on.
Yeah, I see that we have a bunch of questions. So yeah, let's do that. Grace, maybe you want to jump on here and tell us something that's on the mind of one of our audience members?
Yes, we actually had some audience members email some questions into us. So the first one that we have is, how can tech be used to support culture and heritage tourism? Will it not over-modernize what is ancient and sacred?
Your Royal Highness, maybe how is technology helping you develop and protect the sites that you work with?
Technology has been an incredible asset for us. Just piggybacking on what Amr said a little bit before, that for many who do not want to come and have a long-term stay, technology offers that alternative, that they can just go online and understand what the site is all about. And that weeds out those who just want that quick, check on the list, and those who actually want to stay and have a meaningful experience. In that case, technology then offers you the opportunity for people to plan ahead of time, for people to understand more, to really go deep into the product that they seek to have and to experience. So it's a great tool for awareness building. It is also a great planning tool. So when things are done electronically, you know how many people are coming, you know where they're coming from, you know what time they're going to go in, what time they should go out. And so that gives you an opportunity to really plan very, very well. Make sure that you control the numbers, make sure that you disperse the crowds, and do the visitation, the tedious visitation planning and management that you need to do in these sites with, ahead of time. So in many ways that has been great. And then for the preservation industry in general, technology is a great tool. It gives you the ability to study monuments. It gives you the ability to see where you can't see with the naked eye, to monitor, to have the ability to, how much humidity is in the air and what is it doing to the rock, or, from very, very precise numbers all the way up to sort of more big picture things that will then give you the data that can inform really scientific based preservation strategy and preservation policies. And I think that is critical for our work to protect these sites. I wanted to just add one little thing not related to this question. As Amr was describing all of the elements that go into the management of the site, he left one out, which I think has been incredible in Al-Ula, and I'm a huge fan, which is the importance of vision and leadership. I mean, having somebody like Amr leading this journey of developing Al-Ula. Yes, he said, probably we in Petra started this much earlier, but I think what has happened in Al-Ula with his leadership and his vision and the ability to integrate the experiences of other sites and to really bring in an understanding of what the sites are about and what the visitors seek in these sites has been incredible. So kudos to him and his team for incredible leadership and vision in really leading this whole process in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, you're right. I'm very humbled by what you say. I mean, we're learning from great examples around the world, and we've been pleased to experience a lot of learnings in Petra and others. We're lucky. We are in good times in Saudi Arabia, where the leadership of the Crown Prince has shown us a lot more of the potential of the land and the potential of the people, and everybody is suddenly aligned. That creates huge momentum going forward. But we are at the beginning. We enjoy now the launch of our Al-Ula season. A lot of life is coming back, concerts and great activations. So we welcome all of you to come. The weather is amazing, and today is a big day for Saudi Arabia, by the way. Today, Saudi Arabia officially has lifted all public restrictions with Corona. So we are back to life and we are rising again. So
I just want to jump in here for Demian and mention something that's really interesting about this conversation. Technically, we have two archaeological Nabatean kingdom destinations. They are in the same part of the world, and many would argue that they're competitors. And what's been so lovely about this conversation is it's actually demonstrating the value of complementing one another. Because especially for regional and long haul travelers, they're not going to go all the way to one or the other. They're going to make it part of their journey. So it's always been lovely seeing the two of you together, Your Royal Highness and Amr, because you've genuinely seen yourself as allies to strengthen both destinations and the industry per se. So I want to make sure our viewers don't miss that important point, because now is not a time for competition. Everyone needs to reconnect. Before we go to the next question from the audience, I want to ask you both briefly, if you can just tell us in a number, how many people do you anticipate employing in the next 2 years at a community level through Petra and Al-Ula? Your Royal Highness.
Well, the population of Petra is about 35,000, 38,000 people. 85% of the population of working age is engaged in tourism in one way or the other. This has come to a halt in the last 2 years, so the situation is very difficult for the local population. But in terms of how many jobs if we can see tourism picking up from where it was, we're talking about 15,000 to 18,000 jobs from the local community. And it's practically, 85% of the working age population. You also have many people who come to the area from other parts of Jordan. So this for us is a huge number.
Indeed. And Amr, from your side?
Very similar size. Al-Ula is about 45,000 people. Majority of them are not in tourism, so they're employed mostly in government-paying jobs or local farming activities. We are very carefully building the tourism job industry. It should be around 5,000 people that we can employ for tourism, direct and indirect, by the end of in 2 years from now. But honestly, we learned a lot from this COVID-19, and we know what it does for tourism jobs. So we're now trying to enable businesses and individuals to have what we call dual capabilities. So we're now rethinking our human capital program and making sure that people can thrive in tourism, but have skill set to work at distance or work on distribution centers or work on online sales and have additional emergency toolkit to make a living during the drop of tourism. And that's something we're going to revisit completely in our human capital program.
This is so important. Can I just, what Amr has just said is so critical for communities that depend on their livelihoods from sites like Petra, like Lola, like any other sites, where quite frequently tourism represents the easier monies in the absence of disasters like COVID and others. And so you find that's a pitfall that we in Petra have fallen in, which is so many of the population was purely dependent on the tourism income. And so when the site was closed, which it was for many months, income literally went to zero. And there was no advanced planning for that. There was no anticipation.
I mean, the whole world didn't know that. So everybody got taken by surprise.
Yes. And the government came in, the Ministry of Tourism came in and tried to support many members of the community who did suffer. But what Amr was saying about really considering skill sets that are tourism related, but are also transferable into other industries that can support people's livelihoods in a very thoughtful way if you have shocks like these in the future. This is a very critical component of the planning.
And it links to the industry at large, because we know our Achilles heel right now is bringing people back into the industry because they haven't been able to trust the consistency of jobs. You're absolutely right. Demian, over to you for any more questions.
I had a question for Amr. It's just a short answer because probably could take forever and we don't have that much time. But there's, as Anita mentioned, this is one of the giga projects that's taking place in Saudi Arabia, and you have so many big projects, and first many, and how big they are. How do you not get lost within that? And how do you differentiate? I'm in the industry. I can't keep track of all of them. I confuse them all. So how will the tourist or how will the other countries be able to, with so many projects going on, differentiate them and understand how they complement each other or compete with each other? How do we make sense of that?
Perfect. I think it's almost a blue ocean. So basically, it is because of the quality of the assets. And maybe one day when you visit, you will see that the quality of the seas and the quality of the Green Mountains in the south as just basically assets under-leveraged, underutilized. So they do lend themselves to be developed, and that's for sure, an opportunity. Now, we do have the Tourism Commission, the national promoter who's going around the world now and starting to put the story in chapters. And meaning being able to tell the Saudi Arabia sand and sea story, Saudi Arabia winter destination story, and crafting more of like easy but compounded story. I mean, like the US has California and has Florida and has Boston and has Chicago, and you can go on forever. There is some market education that needs to happen. I think we suffer from significant number of years oversimplifying Saudi Arabia as Bedouin with tents. And I think people are like, what? It's not, so there is media education that's happening where there is no competition, honestly, just too much demand. I mean, I am happy for all the sites to develop around us so we can even lower traffic on Al-Ula. So it's been very complimentary. Today, we received our first cruise ship traffic. They came to Red Sea and they paid extra to drive to Al-Ula and spend, the day here. And they were premium. It's a premium segment of the cruise. So we do support the Red Sea activities as well. And we're just at the beginning of a big realization that it hasn't been discovered.
Great. Anita, I think you want to do the honors.
I shall indeed. And sadly, we have some more questions, but we don't have the time, which I always say is it's the only resource that Al-Ula and the Vision 2030 initiatives don't have is time. So from my side, a sincere, loving shukran to you both for joining us. Importantly, I think cultural and heritage are what are teaching travelers around the world manners and really appreciating to understand where they are going and the fact that it's someone else's home. At the end of the day, we are guests. So for you both being our guests, sincerest thanks. This has been a really rich, rewarding, and quite royal conversation, shall I say. So from me, thank you very much, all of us at Rise. Over to you, Demian.
I never know what to say. You always do these beautiful thank yous, and there's nothing really else for me to add except for it's been a pleasure to meet both of you. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's not really an area that's my specialty, and I've learned quite a bit now. And it's very looking forward to visiting both places and to meeting you both in person one day. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Royal Highness. It's a pleasure always being with you.
Lovely to see you again.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, that was really interesting, I must say. And they were a perfect complementary, non-competitive pair to have on the Rise stage.
Yeah, well done, Anita. I think it's quite different from many of the other episodes that we've had, and I think it's a little bit, it's refreshing for me as well to step out of my comfort zone and have a different conversation. So thanks for organizing that. All right, Grace, I think it's time for total knockout. Grace, what are we debating today?
Thank you, Demian. Today you are debating, did the past 2 years show that corporate travel and business trips at the company's expense are redundant? Demian, over to you.
I mean, I don't really know how we can debate this because the answer is just a clear yes. There's really no other side of it. Look, I've got 10 points I could make. I'm just going to make a few of them because I don't want to be too aggressive. First is every survey that's out there over the last year is basically saying the same thing. And I coincidentally showed one of them earlier today. Everybody is cutting back on business travel going forward. They're recognizing that it's expensive, that it's time consuming for the customers. It's not very productive. It's inefficient. It's bad for the environment to a certain degree. And we've learned how to live without so much business travel. Most companies are saying the lack of business travel did not have a serious impact on their operating performance, other than obviously hospitality and tourism companies. Firms have to demonstrate that they're having more sustainable practices and being able to say, you know what, we've cut our travel down by 80%, and so we're emitting less carbon and using less flights. That's an easy win for them. They save money and they are doing something good, or at least saying that they're doing something good for the environment. The well-being of employees who always had to be away from their families, traveling for business here or there, stress, airports, right? We don't need to do that so much. And just so we're clear, because I don't want Anita to misinterpret, I am not saying business travel is obsolete. We're saying it's redundant in many cases, especially for internal meetings and for little follow-ups to generate new business or meet a new client. There's always going to be some business travel, but people that are predicting 50% reduction in business travel, I think that's conservative. So I'd have to say, yeah, I do think business travel at the expense of companies is largely redundant, given that we all now accept this technology. Look, we're doing it right now. It's working perfectly. Anita?
Hey, Professor Hodari, you know my love and respect for you as a professor, as a strategist, and as an academic who does not normally travel very much and whose business does not rely on it and is slightly introverted as a person. However, I didn't think you'd simplify this that much, because as someone who works in diplomacy, when you say every survey and every one, that's a really big term. With respect, sir, your study that you talked about sustainability today was a sample size of less than 100 people, and you said it was everyone. When we talk about business travel, it is not simply about people going for business meetings. We know that it's about the purpose of travel, which is critical. Are we going to have a different business travel in the future? Yes, because internal meetings that we can do on Zoom in our pajama bottoms and dressed from the top up, that is going to disappear. The optics are incorrect. Spending the money on it now is incorrect. However, it's about the ROI, the return on investment, the return on important relationships, the return on inspiration, the return on competitiveness, and especially for the extroverts who are salespeople who need to generate business to keep the jobs going, that is critical. McKinsey made it very clear that there are 4 segments. There's the never left, and we see that in domestic business travel in places like the US. People are coming back, the domestic flights are filling, business is coming back. We see it at major trade events where people need to have that direct contact for demonstrating product, for signing relationships, for building trust. That's about 15% of estimated corporate travel in 2019. The never returning 1 in 5, we know that because again, we can Zoom it. People don't want to do those meetings. However, there's the fear of missing out, the FOMO, as we say. People missing out on major events are going to miss the deals. Their competitors are going to strengthen their relationships, and the ability for businesses to grow is going to suffer. That's going to be a major problem. Now, importantly, there is the wait and see. So we've got 60% who want to keep going. We've got 5% who are wait and see. You haven't blinked, so I suspect that my floor has frozen.
No, I'm attentive. I'm attentive here.
All about the ROI. Scrapping business travel is dangerous to business recovery. It is dangerous to competitive momentum. It is dangerous to livelihoods and strengthening relationships. So I say no. To simplify it as all of it is gone and everyone and every company, with great respect, sir, not a chance.
I just need 1 second. I'm just saying every survey I've seen, I'm not saying everybody thinks this, but every survey I've seen this, and the 100 were 100 people who make decisions about business travel. I hope it bounces back. My industry and my livelihood relies on it as well, and do many jobs. So it's not about whether I want it to go away, just being realistic. Okay, Grace. Let's see how people think.
Okay, everybody, do you agree with Demian here that there is no debate? It is a clear yes. Every survey says it's bad for the environment. Business travel has no impact on productivity, and the businesses must show more sustainable practice. Or do you agree with Anita that Demian has just simplified it too much? His studies show less than 100 people, and he are claiming that they're saying everyone. It is about the purpose of travel, and it's about the ROI, the return on inspiration and relationships. Time to choose.
Ho ho.
Finally.
And that was without the blessing of Grace's audio, because I don't know about you, but I missed it. And her summaries are always so good.
I think what she said was, Demian clearly won, but I'm going to make it look like Anita won. I think that's what she was saying there. No, I agree. I agree with a lot of the things that you said. I think there's a certain part of business travel that's disappearing and a certain part that's never going to. I know we're running out of time. Let's jump forward. We've got a couple things to share with our audience. One really interesting one. Back in probably, what was it, April, Barb Stuckey was here from Madsen, a good friend of mine. And for our career opportunity of the week, she wanted us to post they're looking for an innovation engagement manager there in California. It's somebody who loves and lives for food. You'd be responsible for managing cutting edge innovation projects. So this is really a great way to combine innovation and food, which is what Madsen does. They're looking for someone with at least a bachelor's degree and at least 4 years of experience in the food industry. Could be in food service restaurants or CPG. As always, email us at riseweekly2020@gmail.com. Put Rise Job of the Week in there with your CV or any questions, and we'll forward that along for you. Anita.
Excellent. Thanks, Demian. Please join us, everyone, on Monday, November the 1st, 2 weeks' time, for the next episode of Rise. We're going to be talking about innovation through collaboration. Let's do this. Joining us are two great leaders, Michael Levy, the co-founder of Cube Ventures, and Elliot Mershon, the founder of the Sigmund Project, two leaders from our industry who are looking at the next chapter of innovation and development through their new initiatives. We're very excited to have them with us, talking about not just smart solutions, but solutions that bring all of us together to create sustainable ways of making a stronger travel, tourism, and hospitality industry in the future. Between now and then, please do go to our website, rise-weekly.com, where you'll find all of our past episodes, and you can make sure that you register so that you can participate in our polls and in the Q&A. Between now and then, as always, please do stay strong, stay hopeful, stay inspired, and stay with Rise. Demian, over to you for the close, sir.
Look, I think this was a great episode. It's so nice, all the mails that we get. So please do reach out to us with ideas for future shows or things you like, or ideas for segments, or comments about Anita's wardrobe, or sense of humor. Thanks, everybody. Have a great 2 weeks, and we'll see you in November. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.